Right? You're good
It's
enough.
always fun.
You're smart enough, and gosh darn it, people
God,
like you.
People like you. People
That's
like you.
it.
They
Woohoo!
do. All right,
Good,
let's do
good.
it.
Yeah, let's do this. So, hey, everyone, what's up? It's Phil Gerbishak. I'm here today with the man, the myth, the legend that is Tom Webster. He is what, senior audio geekologist, something like that?
So, senior vice president for Edison Research.
Holy
and
crap, dude!
I know, right? It happens when you're old. You get that. You get that. And we're, I do a lot of things in my job. I'm mostly a consumer insights research person, but man, the digital audio space for us has just blown up in the last 2 years, and that's kind of like 90% of what I do now.
Yeah, well, for sure. I mean, so it's interesting. You've been podcasting a long time as well. I mean, you and Schaefer have been doing the Marketing Companion podcast for a long time, and you are major consumer, always sharing great insights about this. And now, like, people are finally starting to get this, Tom. So why now? Why are people getting this now? And is that really even true? Are people actually getting this now, or not so much?
Well, there's two answers to that, Phil. I think one answer is that advertisers are starting to get it. And I do a lot of work in the advertising space, right? I work with a lot of agencies and buyers, and also podcast networks and streaming audio networks. And it's starting to become a safer place for media buyers to place their money. And it's kind of an important thing for anybody in the advertising and the media space to realize, is that someone at an agency, someone who is a broadcast media buyer or a digital media buyer, they all have the same goal, and that is to not get fired. And you don't get fired by spending your money in safe ways. And so this space is becoming safer to spend money on. So that's one big thing that's happened. And as more money is entered into the space, the content game has ramped up. The interest in advertisers has ramped up. The interest in the press in general about things like podcasting and just voice in general have really ramped up. So I think, we spend a lot of time, Phil, in content marketing talking about text, what you write, and video. Video is ginormous, but there are three kinds of content. There's text, there's video, and there's audio. And I think audio has really gotten short shrift from marketers and advertisers in terms of its power, but that's starting to change.
Okay. So that's interesting. I mean, radio has been around far longer than TV.
Yes, older than me.
Older by a couple weeks. So yeah, so that's good, right? I mean, so
yes.
So why did it take podcasting so long? I mean, is it because we have no real statistics, or what's the problem?
We have really good statistics, actually. This is kind of a misnomer about podcasting in particular, is that we don't have great stats about podcasting, because there's always this disconnect between how many people downloaded a podcast and then how many people listen to it. We have great statistics on downloads. That's server level data. That's the same data that you would get from banner ads and click-throughs and things like that. And so I think in the earlier days of podcasting, people felt, people believed the edge cases. And the edge case was that this podcast is getting downloaded but not being listened to. But what we have learned over the years is that that doesn't happen that often. When people download something, they listen to it. Apple will unsubscribe you from something if you haven't listened to it in like 3 weeks. And so we have really good data. We have much better data in digital audio than broadcast radio has. And broadcast radio is a, $16 billion business with kind of not great data, kind of estimates on a few hundred people in any given market, what they're listening to, what they're not listening to. So I think podcasting in particular has been judged unfairly, as it's been judged to the same kind of standards that display ads and banner ads have had online, but nobody clicks on those things. So what are you just selling impressions? Is an impression in a podcast better or worse than an impression in a display ad? I think it's better. So it's, those concerns are going away.
So how's it better, Tom? That's interesting because I think intrinsically I agree with that. I mean, that seems to make some sense to me, but I don't know why. Why is that true?
Well, a lot of it comes down to the, when people watch you, Phil, if you mention a product or service that you use a lot, right? You have a trust, you have an audience, and you've built that trust up. And that is something that we have tons of research on that conveys a much bigger force multiplier than how people feel about a banner ad on a site, even if it's a site they love, even if it's a site that's a kind of a niche website with great writers and that they really support. People don't necessarily associate the advertisers with the authors of that site like they do on a podcast. But honestly, this is something I've researched for 25 years. It's true in broadcast radio. It's very true in podcasting. When the host of a show endorses or speaks positively about a brand or product or service, it has a real kind of force multiplier effect. And it does more than what a television advertisement might do. A TV ad tells people, here's a product or service. It has this feature or benefit, and you might like that. But what an endorsement in a podcast does, it does more than just, here's a product, feature, service, or benefit you might like. It says, the people who support this podcast, the people who support making this content that I really enjoy happen, they must be good people. There must be good people behind that brand. And so I'm going to give that brand a chance. And that's a different proposition entirely. And I think that's worth a premium. And it's really taken well over a decade, I think, for the advertising community to get there, to see that premium. But the results are there. And so much of I know I'm talking a lot about advertising. I'll get to content. But so much of the advertising that's successful in podcasting right now doesn't depend on download metrics or listen metrics. It's all direct response. It's all, order a Casper mattress and use this code, or try Blue Apron and use this code. They see the results. Direct response works incredibly well in podcasting. So we know that it works.
That makes sense. Okay, that's good. Now I'm curious. Does it matter that and this show is not sponsored by Casper Mattress? You just mentioned them. I'm just bringing them up because you talked.
But I am
about
sponsored
them
by Casper Mattress, so
Casper
good.
Mattress.
Okay.
Yeah, so use code Webby 2001. No, but
exactly.
Right, but that would be an irrelevant advertisement on my podcast,
on your show,
right?
Absolutely
so
would. Yeah.
As opposed to, hey, I get my glasses at Zenni Optical, and I love Zenni Optical. They're also not a sponsor, but if they're actually listening, sponsor me, right? They should be. Because true, I mean that sincerely. I do love them. I think I have some level of influence because most people recognize my glasses. They have no idea who I am, but they think, hey, guy with cool glasses, I get that. So, but what happens when we start seeing the schmucks on podcasting that now advertise, again, irrelevantly at a product they don't use, don't care about, but happens to pay them $87 a click?
Yeah. I don't care, honestly. I don't actually care about them. I think everybody has a right to make money the way that they want to make money. And I think when podcasting is a truly healthy and self-sustaining medium, every revenue model works. So, if your revenue model is that you have a passionate audience that can support you with direct donations, through Patreon or, Radiotopia is a big kind of direct funding platform. That's great. If you're doing direct response advertising and you're getting good money from ZipRecruiter and, Squarespace and things like that, I want that to work for you too. If you want to run national ads, if you want to take the gecko, as I like to say, and just flat out play an ad from Geico, I want that to work too. I want them all to work. And it's a false choice, I think, to try to say, do this and not do that. They can all work in podcasting because ultimately what podcasting is about is I want to listen to exactly what I want to listen to, exactly when I want to listen to it and where I want to listen to it. And I think that is that can support multiple monetization schemes. And I want them all to work.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think also it's the who is delivering that content. I think in many cases that's important too, right? The personality of the host, the 7 people that watch the show besides my mom all like the show, hopefully because of me. Hi, Mom. Yeah. But really, I think that's an important thing as well. So let's talk about the audio brand, Tom. That was one of the things that I think intrigued me about some of the research that you've done, is the power of an audio brand and how that's different and how that's the same as kind of the rest of the brand.
Yeah, I think it's, and I'm going to talk about this next week at Content Marketing World. And, one of the things I noticed about Content Marketing World, and I'm not faulting them, I've spoken there this will be my 5th year. I love the people there. I love Robert Rose and Kathy McPhillips and everybody associated with the brand there. There's 140 sessions at Content Marketing World, and only 2 of them are on audio. And yet audio is one of the 3 basic planks of content, right? You have text, you have video, and you have audio. And it's not just about podcasting. And so much of my practice at Edison is not just podcasting, but it's, I work with Pandora and Spotify. I work with NPR and American Public Media and a number of the, lots of the podcast networks. But we also have this new thing that has entered our space. And it's, I think, more significant than people think. And that is the rise of the smart speaker, of things like the Amazon Alexa suite of products, Google Home. There's Microsoft has the Cortana series of products to come out. And it's a mistake to think about these things as just a gadget, as something that will end up at the back of a drawer somewhere, just a speaker that you talk to. That's not the right take on this. The right take on this is it's how we're going to communicate with computers. It's how we're going to get the media that we want to hear, because it's not about the speaker. It's about the voice assistant technology. And that's going to get baked into your television very soon. That's going to get baked into your refrigerator. That's going to get baked into your toaster. And also, very important, it's going to get baked into your car. And when it becomes easy in your car to get exactly the digital media that you want to consume, that's going to subvert the entire audio space. That's going to drastically impact broadcast radio, because broadcast radio does not really have a great play there. I work in the audiobook industry. You're going to hear more audiobooks. You're going to hear more podcasts. You're going to hear more streaming audio from people like Pandora and Spotify. And all of those things are nearly advertising free. They're either ad Spartan or ad free. And so what's going to happen is you're going to have this entire giant swath of the American population that you just can't reach with traditional interrupt advertising anymore. So I'm very bullish on the, what we're calling the smart speaker space, what I call the voice assistant space, because, as we use those devices to get the content we want, get the media we want, and also start to conduct commerce, it's going to become very important for brands to have a voice. And I mean a literal voice, because if my commerce is conducted by just saying, Alexa, I need more printer paper, where's the brand in that? Where's the retailer in that? It's going to be really, really difficult for retailers that do not have a voice, that don't have a brand voice for their retail, to get what I would call top of mind preference. It's one thing to have top of mind awareness, but top of mind preference, when you ask your smart speaker, order this, order that, are you asking for a specific retailer? Do you care about that? Or do you just want the thing to show up at your door from Amazon Prime? It's probably the latter. So it's going to be really a difficult environment for retail, especially, but also for brands.
Boy, that's really interesting, Tom. I hadn't thought about all of that. Yeah, that's mind blowing, man. So okay, I love like portable, battery power packs, right? Sure. I'm a big nerd on that. My favorite brand is probably Anker. Anker works best. My second, though, is by my buddy Chris Reimer. It's Busatek. Busatek does not show up in the top 10 of battery packs. So how does how does he flip that to have that on the top? Because I don't know that even I would know how to audio scroll to get to that unless I said, "Hey Alexa, give me the Boosatech, battery pack."
Well, if that's how you're going to order it, right? If that's how you're going to order a battery pack, then you need to have a presence. You need to have a native presence in that channel. So if you're envisioning a scenario here where you are ordering a Boosatech on, Amazon Alexa, and I've had to rename mine, by the way, because I set it off constantly, as you might imagine. Then you need to have a presence on that channel, and there, certainly some of our clients have that kind of presence where they can inform people about skills that are offered on those devices. I think you need to do something that's helpful to people. My friend Jay Baer wrote a book called Utility a few years back that we contributed research to. And I think it's important for people to think about audio utility. How are you helping people? I mean, to me, the greatest audio app of all time is older than I am, and that's the Butterball Turkey Hotline. If you're cooking a turkey on Thanksgiving, and you've been cooking it all day at 200 degrees and it's just not working out, don't do that. The Butterball Turkey Hotline is the thing that you can call in a moment of crisis because you need help, because your turkey is a salmonella pit and you're in the weeds, right? You've got to get this done and your hands are full. That's what audio is all about. So I think it's important for brands to think about, how can I help people in the moment of need, when their hands are full, when they're holding a baby, when they've got arms full of groceries, when they're on their way out the door, to give them exactly the things that will help them get through their day. And if you are the brands that can do that, if you're the brands that can be associated with that, then I think you're doing a higher calling, right? You're actually helping customers. And I think that's why we're all in business.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that's really awesome. So, hey Alexa, call the Butterball Turkey Hotline, or hey Alexa, play some soothing music to help my baby fall asleep. Very similar kind of needs, right?
Yeah. Or hey Alexa, call Grubhub and deliver the turkey because I really messed this one up. All of those things are possible, and I think having a brand voice, and there's so many examples of this, right? And it's not just, it doesn't have to be a human voice. It could just be, audio branding. I mean, who can't do the Intel Inside jingle? Like, everybody can do that. That's such a powerful piece of audio branding. I'll give you one of my favorite pieces of a helpful example of an audio first content strategy. And that's a podcast. It's about 3 minutes long, called Chompers. Chompers is sponsored by Crest, and it is designed for kids to listen to while they brush their teeth. And it gives them something fun. It gives them some fun information or a fun activity to do or to think about. Oh, and by the way, it also tells them every 30 seconds, okay, switch to the bottom left side, switch to the top right side, switch to the top left side. It's meant to be listened to while you brush your teeth. And I think that's freaking brilliant audio content marketing, because it is in a context that any parent can imagine. Like, none of our kids brush their teeth enough. They just don't. Like, adults don't brush their teeth enough. And so here's this really short piece of content that is very subtly branded. There's no ad for the product on there. Again, it's about, do you like and trust the people behind the brand? Oh, they brought me this great content, I will consider them. That's really, really powerful. But it's a piece of audio that fits into your life while you're doing something else. And that's something that audio can do that video truly can't, and that text truly can't. Audio can really be a companion to the things you're already doing. And finding the ways to help the humans in a profitable and delightful way with audio. There's so much opportunity there.
Wow. So an audio first content strategy. That's interesting. That's very interesting. So okay. So you work with a lot of the big brands. You got an idea on how a smaller brand could actually think audio first, Tom?
Well, I think, consistency is a big part of it. And also to have a distinct point of view. I think in terms of our company, in terms of Edison, we do have a consistent audio brand. I mean, it's me. Typically, I present everything that we do online. I present a lot of what we do that's in the public eye, that's on camera. And so when I go to agencies privately to represent clients or present things, they know my voice. And that's such a basic thing, right? If I ask you to think about a Motel 6 ad, you can hear Tom Bodette's voice.
I was just going to say, I sure do.
Right?
Leave the light on for you, Tom Bodette.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and it's consistency. And with consistency comes familiarity. And with familiarity comes a relationship. And so, those are the kinds of things that I any brand, and I think a lot of here about B2B brands. B2B brands don't often think about this stuff because they think, well, we're just going to put out a white paper and produce a webinar or whatever. But having a consistent, compelling, and engaging, voice behind doing those webinars, behind all the stuff that you put out there, people just don't think that much about it because, most webinars suck, Phil. You've seen some lousy webinars. I've seen some lousy webinars, and it's less about what you're seeing on the screen than it is about how people are engaging with you. So even the most esoteric B2B brand, I think, has room to consider, what does your brand sound like? What does it sound like? Is it friendly? Is it authoritative? Is it calming? Is it unnerving? And all of those things are possible, right? And is that consistent?
That's interesting. So I think that tells me that there's opportunity for speakers, like human speakers like you and me, to possibly find either our voice or help a brand be the voice of the brand. Again, going back to the spokesperson, not because of celebrity, but because of consistency, which is a different conversation than, that do you want to sound like a Betty Crocker, a Midwestern housewife? Or do you want to sound like Sam Kinison? I mean, I remember Sam Kinison being loud, and he was the voice of something in the 90s until he, God rest his soul, right? So till he passed. But that's interesting. So consistency, I really like that, Tom. That really resonates.
I think, consistency is a huge part of it, and just thinking it through. I think it's not something that people think through because content, if you're writing a white paper or something like that, like nobody sees the human behind that, but the voice is so evocative. The voice is so moving to people. You think about the most successful podcasts right now. They're great storytellers with great evocative voices. And, every brand has a story to tell. And I think, you and I both speak, and I think, my speaking has been like 100% audio this year. That's kind of new for me to kind of steer into such a niche in that sense. But, I'm having a lot of fun with it. Having people that are evocative and engaging storytellers, evocative and engaging voices, and kind of, as a brand being associated with that, it's going to be increasingly important, especially again, as we continue to ask for content from things like Alexa and Google Home. And these are not small, these are not, insignificant phenomena that, we track any number of different technologies and media channels in our research at Edison. And the smart speaker space just about tripled in 1 year. We've never seen any technology grow that fast. Smartphones didn't grow that fast. Nothing has grown as fast as smart speakers. They're essentially, for a lot of people, a $30 computer that you can have in the bathroom. And when people get accustomed to asking for things from those devices, whether those devices are a smart speaker or whether that device is in their car or their television, they're going to get either the easiest solution for them or the thing that they have developed a relationship with, the thing that they would actually go out of their way to ask for, even if it's not the easiest thing, which is the ultimate definition of brand loyalty. And given that it's a voice medium, that requires a brand that really wants to play in that space to have an evocative, engaging, consistent, and brand appropriate voice that is always associated with that brand or product.
That's so interesting, man. This is just so fascinating to me because it almost harkens back again to the days of radio.
Yeah.
Of how, because there is a third medium, and even though we hear it's the age of video, I understand. I mean, it makes sense. People like to watch video, but I'm seeing most people actually prefer to read video or to listen to it. And the fact that like Facebook video, you can't minimize it. It's very hard. I mean, on your mobile, sometimes it'll stay up, sometimes not. I mean, YouTube is now charging for the right to let them play in the background.
Right.
That's just so interesting how that happens. So let's talk more about content, Tom. Let's talk a little bit more about a audio first content strategy and how that might be different from even mobile first or video first content strategies. Some of the things that we've heard in the last 10 years, but given that you said tripled with smart speakers, it sounds like something we need to do.
Yeah, it really is. And there's so much opportunity for brands and even small businesses to kind of own a little piece of someone's day. And I think especially even for like local businesses and smaller brands to have a slice of time in everybody spends time with audio every day. The average American listens to 4 hours of audio every day. The average person who listens to podcasts listens to 6 hours of audio every day. They just listen to a lot of audio, and anybody has the right to have a tiny slice of that if you are helpful and useful in the moment. You think about the daily commute. The time is coming very, very soon. This is not science fiction. It's actually possible now, where I could just walk into my car and say, hello, car. Play my morning commute. And it starts off with my local forecast. It starts off with only the traffic that is relevant to the route I normally take. It starts then with the news that I am interested in. And then, whatever comes next, do I want to laugh for a few minutes? Then I'll get the thing that makes me laugh for a few minutes. Do I want to learn something new? I'll get the thing that makes me, learn something new. And that'll happen in 22 minutes, and it'll be customized to me. And I'm going to love that. I'm going to love that because it's exactly what I wanted to hear. We've done some research. We did a study called the Commuter Code, where we actually mounted GoPro cameras into the cars of people. And we had the camera mounted at, their smartphone, if that's where their media came from, or their dashboard or their radio. And we basically coded all of these interactions about what people listen to, how often they switched. And the more technology that people had in their car, especially the people that had like completely internet connected dashboards, the less they switched. They had more choices. They switched less, and a lot less. And the reason they did that was because they could get exactly what they wanted. Exactly what they wanted. Unlike listening to the radio, where if you want to get to the Harry Styles song that you really want to hear, you've got to hear 3 songs you don't. The more connected your dashboard is, the less that's true. And so in that space, in that world where people are getting exactly what they want, and they're increasingly willing to pay for the ability to get exactly what they want, to subscribe to Netflix, to subscribe to HBO and Spotify and Pandora One and things like that. The harder it is to reach them if you're a brand, unless you're really relevant to their everyday life. And audio is a great way to do that because it's a companion medium. It's relevant to me when I'm working out. It's relevant to me if I live on the 18th floor. I don't have a garden, but if I had a garden, I would listen to audio while I was gardening. So it's just a chance to add value in that period of time where people are doing other things with their eyes.
Wow. Well, it sounds to me like every brand would do well to develop a 2-minute show. something that they could put together in 2 minutes that could be, to your point, that in between, so that you could fit into somebody's 26-minute commute with the weather and the sports for the day, what the stock market is doing, and maybe, just maybe, that 2-minute tech show that is going to bring you a good tool every single day.
See, I love that kind of thing. And there's so much growth. And I'll go back to podcasting here for a moment. There's so many potential avenues of growth in things like podcasting. If you look at the top 20 or top 50 shows in podcasting, they're longer shows. They're more thoughtful content. There's a lot of public media content, This American Life and Serial and things like that. But if you think about the times in your day when you can fit in those quick tips, that little hit of audio, there's so much potential there for those things to enter into people's lives that I don't think the top charts, the top podcasting charts and things like iTunes are at all reflective of where we can go. They're just reflective of where we've been. And look, any of our speaker friends that have talked to me about getting into podcasting, and I'm gonna do a little speaker thing tomorrow night with some of our Speak and Spill friends. I'm recommending really short content, not because there's a right answer to how long your podcast should be. There isn't, but there are more opportunities for you to get your message into someone's everyday life if that message can neatly fit into the time where you have to go to the bathroom. Right.
Yeah, no, totally. That makes so much sense to me, that we want to fit instead of going deep. I mean, it's great that, today we can spend an hour together, but some people are going to pop in and out. And the hope is that, I'm going to slice this up so that they can pick the segment that's of interest to them, instead of me presuming that they're going to be interested in the whole hour. And we see viewers pop in and out. We see that happen all the time. So yet, as we talk about that, though, those are the people that love podcasts. Those are the people that love audio. Yeah. Tom, you talk in your article, one of the favorite articles that you've written about kind of the future, about the 52. What the heck is the 52, and how does this relate to other people?
Yeah. So podcasting's been around for like 15 years, and it's never grown quickly. It's grown steadily year over year. Some years 1 percentage point, some years 2 percentage points. But it's gone in terms of weekly listening in the United States from 0 back in 2005, 2006, when I first started tracking it, to 17% of Americans. And that's not, you can't call that rapid growth. You can't call that kind of hockey stick growth, right? It's just steady growth. But at 17% of the US population, 12 plus, which is what we track, that's 48 million Americans who say they listen to a podcast at least weekly. Where I think the world in terms of media and advertisers start to take podcasting completely seriously as equivalent to radio and TV and display is when you get to a reach of 100 million weekly listeners. And so the difference between what we have now, which is about 48 million, and 100, is 52 million weekly listeners. And one of the things that I often challenge people in the podcasting space is, we know that 17% of Americans listen to a podcast weekly. Monthly, that's 26%. And ever, it's 44%. Well, why is there such a gap between ever and 17, right? Why are there so many people that say they've ever listened to a podcast, but they're not regular listeners to podcasts? And to me, that's all about content. They found something at some point to listen to. They found it engaging, or maybe they tried podcasting and found that it was too esoteric or too difficult to listen to, or the topics were not of interest to them. And so I think there are a lot of people that have tried it and kind of discarded it. And we need to spend a lot more time looking at why that is and having an honest discussion about how do you get the 52? Because we've got the 48, and we got the 48 doing certain things, but I don't think those things are going to get the 52. It's just not naturally going to happen over time. Growth doesn't happen forever, because the 52 are different humans. It would have been easy for the founders of MySpace to keep looking at their upward growth patterns back in 2008 and say, soon we'll be bigger than GeoCities or whatever. Growth doesn't continue forever. Growth stops at some point unless you understand the breaks, the limiting factors on that growth. And what the article that you referenced really does is try to illustrate what some of those breaks are.
Yeah. Interesting. So for those watching and listening here, Tom, let's just, I should have done this at the beginning, and that is, what in the heck what is a podcast?
Oh boy, if you opened a box of worms on that.
I know. Tell me.
Yeah. I mean, I have a very liberal definition of what a podcast is. On the one hand, there's a strict technical definition, which I despise, which is, content delivered by RSS syndication via audio enclosure, sort of like a blog would be, but it's audio. But that's what limits podcasting to where it is. That's like, nobody cares about that. I mean, to me, it's just audio that you want to hear, that you can listen to whenever and wherever you want. I mean, to me, if you call your show a podcast, it's a podcast. I'm not going to quibble. If you think it is, it is. But those, I'll give you some examples of kind of client stuff here. This American Life is available as a podcast. If you have a podcast app on your phone, you can listen to This American Life. This American Life is also on the radio. So that's not a podcast. So is This American Life a podcast or not? I guess it depends on where and how you access it. I mean, some things are podcast only, but then, you look at something like, from the same producers, Serial is not on the radio. So when it came out, it was a podcast. It was distributed via, really simple syndication. It was picked up by a podcast app, and you could listen to it. But our clients at Pandora also make it available on their platform. And that's just streamed audio. That's not a podcast in the technical sense, but it is because they say it is. So, it's a whole can of worms. I think people get really hung up on those kinds of things. I mean, to me, it's a show you want to listen to whenever and wherever you want to listen to it. And I don't care beyond that.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I think we should start calling them shows. In fact, I've stopped calling mine a podcast because, frankly, sometimes, I don't even get to the podcast part of it. I like Facebook Live because I can have a real conversation, and the viewers have questions in real time, they can ask them, or they can come back and, you're my guest. So I would tag you and say, well, great question. Tom, let's see what Tom has to say about this. And we can continue the conversation in ways that are not always available, but then eventually making it available audio only, so that those that prefer that, because it's not about me. It's not about you even. It's about the listener. And for me, that's what's important, is the person that wants the content however they want it, whenever they want it, wherever they want it. So many platforms to go that we have, that the answer is not or, it's always and, at least for me.
It's always and. Yeah. And it's always about, and Phil, you've hit the word that I love. And that word is the show. It's always about the show. People don't care how they get the show. They care about the show. And, we talk to a lot of people that are familiar with the term podcasting, but say that they've never listened to a podcast. And they have a lot of misconceptions about what podcasting is. They think they don't have an app on their phone they can listen to it. They think that they cost money. There's that nasty word subscribe that people use with podcasts. I've always hated that word.
Subscribe, rate, and review this show.
You subscribe means something you pay for, with the exception of a YouTube channel. Anything you subscribe to, you pay for. And I've always hated that. But ultimately, it's about the show. And, if you were to ask somebody, do you have the Netflix app on your phone, or do you have the Hulu app on your phone? Most people would say no, or I don't know. But you give them The Handmaid's Tale, and they're going to figure that out pretty quickly. Like Hulu, okay, I push that H button and I can watch The Handmaid's Tale. Yeah, I don't care about the H button. I want to watch The Handmaid's Tale. And podcasting hasn't had the show like that yet. It really hasn't. Serial did well with the chattering classes in the same way that Mad Men did, but that didn't make it a mainstream hit. And we haven't had that in podcasting yet. But I can also tell you this, and I'll I'll go back to radio for a minute because I've worked in every spoken word medium. Just how powerful audio can be. I am old enough to remember the election of Ronald Reagan in this country. And one of the things that really swung voter sympathy and voter opinion towards him was an audio campaign. And it's an extremely famous, it's one of the most famous audio campaigns in advertising history, done by Hal Riney. Hal Riney had a speech only, kind of agency and had a very distinctive voice. And he did a campaign for Ronald Reagan called Morning in America. And if you are, look this up on the YouTube, you'll find it, Morning in America, because the sound of Hal's voice and the optimism and the just hope in the message and how calmly he delivered it, it was an audio brand to an entire presidency. And obviously they completely blanketed the American airwaves with that particular message. If you were at all a radio listener during those years, you'll recognize the voice when you hear it. And to me, that's how audio can capture everybody's imagination, and not just, this little slice of a niche about this podcast or this particular show. Audio can aim higher than that in a lot of ways. And if you get that right match between an engaging voice and an engaging message, the magic happens in here. And that's, video can't do that. Video really can't do that in the same way that great audio can.
I agree. I wish Vin Scully had a podcast. I would listen every day, man.
I would listen every day look, Vin Scully is one of the great voices in American history. I would hear him do diaper commercials. I'm all in on Vin Scully.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and again, it gets back to the consistency of the voice. The fact that we could always trust it to be there, much like Bob Uecker is in Milwaukee, much like Ernie Harwell was in Detroit, much like Joe Buck was in St. Louis.
Yeah, and for me, it was Bob Murphy for the Mets in New York, and listening to aging Bob Murphy, go, and he settles under it, back in the outfield. Here comes it's a fly ball. He settles back under it, and it's gone, because his eyesight was going so badly.
Yeah. Harry Carey too. Let's not forget about the famous Harry Carey from Chicago. Holy cow!
Absolutely. I mean, that's that's why people. It's funny you mentioned this, and I don't want to go down the sports rabbit hole here too much, but what people like Harry Carey and Vin Scully did between here was produce something that fathers talk to sons about, and fathers talk to daughters about, and mothers talk to sons and daughters about. You don't talk to your kids that way about a dry cleaner. You don't talk to your kids that way about a grocery store. But sports is a business, it's a franchise. And the way that we pass it on to people, a lot of it has to do with the experience that's created in here, and not necessarily by what you see. And that, baseball is a great audio sport in that way. And that's, again, I think that's the power of that theater of the mind that audio can produce when it's done really well. It's not easy to do really well.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. My favorite growing up, Tom, at noon, the noon show always had Paul Harvey. And the rest of the story. Every day, listen to Farm Report from 11:30 to 1 o'clock. We got a little 2-minute, 3-minute blip in there of Paul Harvey's the rest of the story.
There's nothing in podcasting like that right now, honestly. Paul Harvey was able to kind of unify a country, left, right, liberal, conservative, in ways that a lot of commercial broadcast talk radio does not do anymore. And he had that ability to do it in 4 minutes, to just tell engaging stories that were edited to within an inch of their life and had just the details required to engage you. And then he'd do these great live reads for, Kitty
Mr. Coffee.
Mr. Coffee. Yeah. Here's my favorite. I'm going to do a very bad Paul Harvey. one of my favorite Paul Harvey rest of the stories that I ever listened to. He had this habit of, he would leave you with a tease, and then he would pay it off with something unexpected, and then it'd go right into an ad. And my favorite one that I heard was, and the man in the cab, my friends, was Boutros Ghali. Page 2, constipation, never let it trouble you again. They have these like incredible
From Boutros Ghali to constipation, Tom?
Like that, yeah. And the man in the cab, my friends, was Boutros Ghali. Page 2, loose stool. Yeah, he just had this like ability. And you went with him on the ride because you trusted him, right? He had a trusted voice, and he never violated that trust. And that's, I've done so much research in the audio space, like even on the news side, and people will believe something is true if they trust the voice telling them that. And you can't violate that trust if you're a brand. You cannot run jive by people, or you will lose that. But if you are a brand that tells truths, if you are a brand that can earn that trust, the voice that you choose conveys all of that.
Wow. Well, that's a good close, Tom, because we could talk the rest of the day about this. But I think the big lesson here, folks, is to choose your voice for your brand carefully. Maybe it's you, maybe it's someone else, but think about who that is. Make sure that it's careful, make sure that it's consistent, and make sure, I would add, that it's frequent, because people forget about you, unfortunately, way too fast, way too much coming at us. It's why daily shows get listened to more than weekly or random shows. So that's interesting. So Tom, I'm gonna let you have the last word here. What else, if folks are thinking, boy, I want to get started with an audio show, I want to get started with an audio first type strategy, what would you suggest to them, please?
Just be audience first. Ignore what it is you think you have to say because the marketing department wants you to say it. That's not going to work in audio. It never does. Be audience first. Be specific about the audience that you want to reach. Be specific and intentional about the humans that you want to connect with, and then connect with those humans. And maybe the way that you connect with those humans has nothing to do with your stuff. Maybe your stuff is just the thing that brings you that message. But ultimately, what people want, they want companionship, they want helpfulness, they want to be entertained, they want to be engaged. And it doesn't really matter what brand you are. If you can engage and entertain and help an audience, you don't need to run ads for your product. You can just be associated with that feeling that people have. That's ultimately, it's all about the audience. And so anybody thinking about entering the audio space with a podcast, a show, a skill on a smart speaker, some kind of daily briefing, think about the audience first. Think about, do you have the right, and do you have the skill, and do you have the ability to fit into their lives in a day-to-day sense? And if you do, then that's a very powerful piece of mind share to have access to.
Wow. Put your audience first always. Try to fit into your audience's day-to-day life. Wow, Tom. That's freaking brilliant, man. I'm so glad we got to spend some time together today. This was
me too.
Really fun,
This
man.
is great, Phil.
Cool.
Awesome.
Well, let me take us out here. So that was Tom Webster, folks. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Tom is the Senior Vice President at Edison Research, co-author The Infinite Dial, The Podcast Consumer, The Social Habit, and many other widely cited studies. He's also half of the Marketing Companion podcast, which is always interesting. He and Mark Schaefer, two guys I have tons of respect for, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say he's also the other half of the amazing Tamsen Webster, who I also adore. She is fantastic. We'll have to get her on the show. But Tom, thanks so much, buddy. This was such a great time with you today. I really, really enjoyed it. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Phil.
Good stuff, man. So, folks, check Tom out. If you get a chance, go visit him. He's not as active as he used to be on Twitter, but he's still there at Webby2001 and just a great guy.